right, we're live. Hello, hello. I'm so excited to talk about Pluto in Aquarius. It's actually a really big transit, or it's a really big thing that's happening. And the reason is Pluto doesn't change signs very often. Pluto changes signs once about every 20 years. So it's actually a really big deal because the sign that Pluto is about to enter and the house that it's going to enter for each of us individually is actually a bigger theme that we'll be experiencing for the next 20 years. And because it's also such a long period, it will be a big theme also for all of us on Earth, actually. So, not just personally, but it's going to impact everybody. What I want to focus on in this live, though, is not so much on the larger picture impact of Pluto on all of society, which is equally as important. I'm sure lots of other astrologers here on YouTube are going to talk about that. But I wanted to focus on our own personal themes with Pluto entering Aquarius and what it's going to mean for each of us personally with our personal stories and our own birth charts. So that's what this live stream is about. So first, we're going to go into Pluto, what the planet of Pluto means, and talk a little bit more about the planet itself. Then we're going to, of course, get into Pluto in Aquarius. So, what does this larger 20 years look like? What are the themes that are coming up for us in general? So, this will be just a tiny thing that we touch on. And finally, we'll go into the rising sign horoscopes. So, we're going to go through each of the houses, each of the rising signs, and have a little peek into how Pluto in a specific house could manifest. And one thing that I will also address right before is, but what about your natal Pluto position? Because obviously we all have Pluto somewhere in our birth chart. So we'll talk about that shortly. And then we'll also talk about houses versus signs, because your natal Pluto might also be in a different sign. It probably is in a couple of different signs for all of the generations that are alive today. So that's sort of the plan for today. I think we can kick it off with Pluto. We can kick it off with talking about the planet Pluto. Like I said, Pluto moves very slowly. So Pluto has been in Capricorn for the last 20 years. And now that it's going to enter Aquarius, it's also going to stay there for about 20 years. So for some of us here on this earth, like, we have never experienced anything different besides Pluto and Capricorn. Like, Pluto and Capricorn might be the only thing we've experienced if we're 19, 18, 17, in those ages. So that's also quite special. The planet Pluto and what it symbolizes our greatest fears, and it symbolizes our subconscious, the things that we have built up in our subconscious that we fear, that we have anxieties around. So you know that you are not dealing well with your Plutonian lessons if you have a sort of blah feeling about life. If you have this sort of emptiness in your life, that you sort of wake up and you think, oh, life is kind of dull and I'm not really passionate about my life, and just another day. I see this quite a lot on Instagram, for example. There is a huge trend nowadays with people coming out about their corporate 9-to-5 jobs and saying, oh, it's just another day. I just get up, go to work, come home, work out, go to bed, and do it over and over again. And they feel like they're lacking this meaning and purpose in their life. And when you have that feeling, it means that you haven't dealt with your Plutonian lessons yet, that you're still learning how to reap the lesson from Pluto. You know that you have faced the Pluto lessons, you have learned and integrated the Pluto lessons, um, when you sort of feel excited for life, when you have a certain zest, you're looking forward to your days, you have a sort of larger meaning or a larger purpose in your life, towards which you're working towards, and just a general excitement to get out of bed and to spend the precious time that we have on this earth. Pluto is called the planet of death. And it doesn't mean that whenever it touches something, it necessarily brings death, but it makes us aware of death, and it makes us aware that none of us are going to be here forever. We all have limited time, and dealing with our Pluto lessons, whatever they may be, eventually at the end of the day comes down to, I'm not going to be here forever, and I want to make sure that while I'm here, I am making the best of it. And if we're struggling with integrating this idea that we're not going to be here forever, that's where you get this sort of unhealthy expression of Pluto. The expression where you think, oh, well, we're not going to be here forever, then, what's the point of getting out of bed? What's the point of trying? What's the point of, saving any money or whatever we're considering doing with our life? When you integrate those Pluto lessons, you come out with a certain intensity. There's a certain fire in you because time is literally running out. You know that like every second, every minute, every hour you're not spending on this mission, on the things that bring you joy and purpose, is basically time wasted. So a person that has really integrated their Pluto lessons come out on the other side with a sort of, yeah, with an intensity, with a zeal, with a passion, aliveness could be another way to explain it, and also a presence. You're not just coasting by anymore. You're not sort of, physically present in places, but emotionally checked out or mentally checked out. But what you're doing, you're really present in it, and you're really there with your full intention, with your full emotions, with your full mental capacity as well. So when we are going through an important Pluto lesson, Pluto transit, Pluto event, there can be strong emotions. Could we expect any less from the planet representing death, honestly? So Pluto can bring strong emotions. Pluto can bring up this realization that we don't have a lot of time left on Earth. Pluto can bring up this realizations that life is not really fair. Pluto can bring up the realizations that people can hurt us, that we're actually can be quite vulnerable. All of these sort of more ugly parts in life. And that can bring up anxieties and fears within us, whatever we each personally carry in our subconscious. So it can bring up anxieties around partnerships and trusting people in partnerships. It can bring up any fears that we have about maybe abandonment, or it can even bring up feelings of loneliness or hopelessness, that you really feel like alone. And like I said earlier, we're all going to die. So what's the point of getting out of bed this morning? However, if you allow that Pluto event to really go through it, to really feel those emotions, really understand at the core of you that these dark parts exist in life and we cannot change them, so we need to accept them. And eventually come to the other end feeling the positive side of that, feeling not ignoring the negative, not pretending like, oh, ignoring that we're all going to die or that there are people that are really quite evil that murder and steal and whatever. Um, Not ignoring it, but accepting it, and at the same time, knowing that you have this precious life and that you can choose what you do with it. And that sort of realization sort of lights up a fire underneath you to say, I want to show up to the best way possible as a person. I want to get over my fears and my anxieties because I keep coming back to us, but time is running out. I want to do something. I want to reach my potential. So you sort of come out of the Pluto event. If you navigate through it by learning the lessons, you come out a little bit sort of wild and unpredictable. And this is because you follow your instinct, you follow your intuition a bit more, and a little bit less the opinions of others or what's expected of you. So therefore, to others, it might really look like you're maybe a bit erratic or, yeah, a bit unpredictable. Um, yeah, so I think that's everything I wanted to mention about Pluto, and I hope that gives you all a little bit of a better understanding as to what the planet of Pluto represents. In general, if I had to describe it in one sentence, I would say uh, when you're going through an important Pluto event, you are learning to give your life a meaning and a purpose. All right, so let's switch to Pluto in Aquarius. First, a drink. And if any of you have questions, please drop them in the chat, and I will try to get to them and answer. I'm curious if any of this resonates. So Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto entering the sign of Aquarius, in general, for everybody, the whole sort of vibe of society, because we're all going to be going through this transit collectively together, is going to give a vibe of questioning everything and doubting everything. If you didn't think we had enough of that already, we're going to have even more. Sorry or not sorry. Because Aquarius is really that sign that doesn't follow the status quo, that really thinks for itself and likes to fashion its own opinions and its own decisions and, yeah, follow its own course. So last time that we had Pluto in Aquarius, we had the beautiful music of Mozart, and we also had the first flight in a balloon. So there might be even more inventive things happening during the next 20 years that we never would have thought were possible. And you hear this a lot with what other astrologers share as well. And it could be around technology. It could definitely be around technology because Aquarius is the zodiac sign that rules technology. One thing that I think could also happen during this time is that a lot of us might be feeling misunderstood because our ideas, this flight in a balloon that we're imagining, that everybody else is sort of thinking like, wow, you're crazy. Like, how are you going to do that? So we might feel misunderstood. We might feel a little bit removed from the crowd, a little bit alone in a way, because our ideas are so forward thinking and so radical. And one of the shadows of Aquarius, actually, if Aquarius cannot really deal with this feeling of being ostracized from the group and cannot accept it, what Aquarius will do is Aquarius will remove themselves from the group and will ostracize themselves from the group. So that could be physically. Aquarius could physically, stop seeing their friends because they feel like, okay, my friends don't get me, so I just won't hang out with them. And then they can never say I'm weird. That's, the logic of Aquarius. I'm an Aquarius, so I know. But one of the other ways that they could also isolate themselves or ostracize themselves from the group is also like emotionally removing themselves from the group. So they're still, they're still participating, but emotionally they close off. They don't share with others what they're thinking, what they're feeling. They don't share with others their cool ideas. So even though a lot of the times when you hear things about Aquarius, you hear that, okay, Aquarius is very much about the community. I do think that it might be difficult for us for the next 20 years to really get that community feeling. I do think that a lot of people in the upcoming years will struggle with getting a community feeling and will struggle with feeling accepted and feeling like they belong. And I do think that a lot of people might also be quite distant, which will iterate that feeling of, oh, I'm alone, because people around us might not be as concerned about being in a community. One of the characteristics of Aquarius is that it's very much concerned with logic and not so much with emotions or with the heart. So we might see a sort of mentality with whatever the new inventions are, these super cool ideas that we're all going to be inventing in the next 20 years. Whatever they are, we might become a little bit more concerned with the logic behind them rather than the human side of them. And to sort of illustrate this, I think one of the stories or one of questions, analogies, I don't know what the word is, that I hear come around a lot is, imagine there's a train is heading for a crowd of 20 people. You can save those 20 people, but in order to save them, you need to put one engineer on the train to stop the train. But that engineer is going to die in the process. What do you choose? And this question is essentially about, do you kill one person or 20? And it's not an easy answer. If you approach it from the heart, you think, yeah, I cannot decide. Every life is important. Every life is of equal importance. And I think Aquarius, for this question, I think Aquarius, because they would go with their logic, would much more easily answer, yes, of course, I would take the one person in order to gain the 20, because one dying is obviously better than 20 dying. But it doesn't mean it's necessarily right. So I think one of the things that we might face as we go forward, and one of the things that we need to be cautious about, is where are we putting logic? Where are we putting logic ahead of emotions or ahead of our own humanity? Are we not forgetting every once in a while to stop intellectualizing everything? On paper, by logic, this new technology might look amazing. But when we zoom out, when we look at the emotions, when we look at the human side of life, this new technology or invention might look a bit sketchy. So that's also one thing that we could potentially be facing as we have Pluto and Aquarius for the next 20 years. All right. So we've gone through the planet of Pluto. We've gone through what Pluto and Aquarius could mean. And before we get into the rising sign horoscopes, I do want to talk a little bit about your natal Pluto. So, all of us have Pluto somewhere in our chart because at the moment we were all born, Pluto was somewhere up in the sky. And the majority of us living today will have Pluto somewhere in the last six signs, I want to say, or even less, maybe the last five signs. So Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, Scorpio. Doing them backwards is a bit difficult. Libra, because Pluto moves so slowly. So we're not going to have, for example, people alive today that had Pluto in Pisces because they would already be dead. So you can quickly pull up your birth chart online. You can then look for the planet Pluto and see in what sign it is for you. And the reason I want to mention our natal Pluto is because where Pluto is in our birth chart is actually the larger life theme that we'll be experiencing for our whole life. Whereas this transit of Pluto entering Aquarius is just like a momentary experience. And for some people, this momentary experience will be more intense than for others. For example, if Pluto is hitting any planets for you or any of the angles, like the ascendant, the descendant, the midheaven, and the IC, then it will definitely be a very strong and important time for you. But Pluto, if it's entering Aquarius and you don't have any placements that it's going to hit, then this event might not be as monumental for you, for example. And if it is going to be monumental and it is going to bring up some things, then you want to always refer to your natal Pluto story first. Because no matter what house Pluto is going to transit now in the next 20 years, in the 20 years after that, it's always going to be bringing up that original natal Pluto theme. So as we're going to go through the rising signs, I want you to keep your eye out for both. I want you to keep your eye out for the house that your natal Pluto is in. And I also want you to keep your eye out for the house that Pluto will be entering in today or on Sunday, on the 21st of January. Because both are of importance. I would say the natal Pluto is the most important. And then, of course, with the transiting Pluto, you get to find out sort of what you can expect to experience for the next 20 years. So if I can sort of illustrate, for example, how this could work. Let's say you have your natal Pluto in your fifth house. Your larger Plutonian story for this lifetime is learning self-expression. It's about learning the fears that you have around self-expression and play and getting in touch with your inner child. So that's your larger life theme. But let's say now as Pluto is entering Aquarius, it's going to enter your 10th house. This is not going to work because you're going to be over 100 years old, but just stick with me for the example. Let's say Pluto, the transiting Pluto, is about to enter your 10th house. This next 20 years, then, it's going to be about getting in touch with your inner child and getting in touch with your self-expression, and specifically in your career. So the manifestation or the places where you're going to be asked to self-express, to play, to be more in touch with your inner child is specifically in your area of career. So that's why you have to see that you cannot really assess the transiting Pluto if you don't know your natal Pluto story. So all of that being said, keep track of, as we go through the rising signs, both your natal Pluto in the house as well as the transiting Pluto in which house it's entering. One last consideration before we get into the rising sign horoscopes is, why are we not talking about the natal Pluto signs? Why are we not going to talk about, but my Pluto is in Sagittarius, or my Pluto is in Capricorn, or my Pluto is in Libra? We're only going to consider houses. Well, first of all, out of practicality, there's just not enough time to consider everything, and it can get quite complex. But also because the signs are a little bit more generational and not as much personal. Pluto in a specific sign represents the emotional and psychological response to, the dark and evil parts of life for that whole generation. All of those people that were born in those 20 years have that same approach, that same psychological reaction to death, to murder, to stealing, lying, whatever. Unless Pluto is really prominent in your chart. So unless Pluto is conjunct your sun, your moon, or one of your angles, then usually the sign of your natal Pluto is not that influential or that important. A lot of the times your house is more important because it's going to show where you will experience these dark parts. It's going to show in exactly like what area of your life you're going to experience these types of subconscious fears. All right. Are we ready to start with the rising sign horoscopes? I hope so. I'm ready. We haven't even started and my throat's already feeling dead. So I hope we can finish it up. All right. So let's start with Aquarius rising. So this is if you have Aquarius rising or an Aquarius ascendant, that means Pluto is going to enter your first house. But this is also for anybody that has their natal Pluto in their birth chart also in the first house. So for Aquarius rising, the next 20 years is going to be about addressing the subconscious fears that you have around leadership, impact, and style. And some of the ways that you really have to come to terms with this is perhaps you're put in a position where you need to express your leadership, or perhaps you're put in a position where you have bad leadership around you, and really bad leadership, like leadership that's lying and cheating and stealing from people and just doing morally wrong things, because we're talking about Pluto after all. And what might happen in the next 20 years is that you really see the power that leaders have and how they're abusing it. And this could sort of lead to a couple of things. You could respond in a way that you say, well, screw leadership. I don't think any of us should ever be leaders, because as soon as you give somebody power, they're going to abuse it. But what Pluto is asking from you, the lesson that Pluto wants you to learn, is to find that leader inside of you and to find your own power and to rise to that occasion and speak up when you're in that situation of bad leadership. One of the things that I would advise to be careful with in the next 20 years is, as we spoke earlier, not to become too intellectual with your leadership, and to always remember the emotional and the humane sides of the people that you're leading. And one of the things that could happen is that you are a good leader and your leadership is very much needed, but the people around you might not like it. The people around you might not be ready for it yet. Your leadership might be too radical. Um, so that's one of the things that you might face as well, is that as you're learning how to step into your leadership powers, that you're also getting some pushback from the community around you as well. All right, let's move to Capricorn rising. So if you are a Capricorn rising or a Capricorn ascendant, this section is for you because Pluto will be entering your second house. Or if you pulled up your birth chart and you see that Pluto is in your second house, your natal Pluto is in your second house, then this is also applicable for you and as your larger life theme story. So Capricorn risings, your 20-year theme is proving yourself to yourself. It's about learning that you have your own back. It's about learning that it's about addressing your subconscious fears of having everything taken away from you and still being able to provide for yourself and take care of yourself, whether physically, emotionally, mentally. So you might have some fears that, for example, you're not provided for. It could be very little physical fears, like you could always have this fear that you're going to lose your house or you're going to lose your job, and you're going to be stranded. And you might have some subconscious fears around powerlessness. You might feel like you're just succumbing to life circumstances, whatever they may be, losing a job, rent prices increasing, um, anything that makes you feel like you cannot stand on your own 2 feet and take care of yourself. So you might have some things coming up in the next 20 years that really bring up those things for you. It doesn't have to be anything extreme like losing a house, but anything that will trigger those feelings in you. Um, so that's for the universe to decide. I cannot tell you what that's going to be. And the lesson that Pluto wants you to learn in the next 20 years is that you are powerful and you can take care of yourself. Um, One of the things that Pluto might bring up during this period as well is, where are you giving your power away for safety? Because you might have a subconscious fear of not being safe, not having enough money, not being taken care of, not having a roof over your head. You might be giving up your power in order to receive that safety. You might be staying in a job that makes you feel powerless because you know that at least with it you're safe because of the paycheck, because of the benefits, whatever. Um, so some of these themes might be coming up for you during the next 20 years. So again, as we said, the lesson that Pluto wants you to learn is that you are strong enough, you're pretty enough, you're wise enough, smart enough to survive the things that are coming your way. All right, let's move to Sagittarius rising. So if you are a Sagittarius rising or a Sagittarius ascendant, Pluto will be entering your third house on not July, on January 21st. And this section that we're going to talk about now is also applicable for those of you that have your natal Pluto in your third house. So for the next 20 years, Sagittarius rising, you're being asked to speak the truth. even though it might shock people, even though it might upset people. The wonderful thing about you is that you see the dark truths that others cannot. You see them quite easily, even though others might ignore them, or maybe they really just don't see them. One of the things that this could lead to is that you want others to notice, so you keep overemphasizing these, dark truths about life. You see somebody happy at work saying, "Oh, good morning. How are you today?" And you have this sort of attitude or feeling of, "Well, don't you know? Like we're all about to die, and there's global warming, and the planet is exploding, and a plane fell yesterday, and what is there to be happy about?" So there can be a tendency in the next 20 years to overemphasize these dark parts of life and to be maybe bitter and a bit harsh with your words because you feel like, is nobody else seeing like how crappy life is? Am I the only one? um, you're not the only one. And it can be indeed nice. What Pluto wants you to do is to share the truths about life and to share the dark parts of life and how unfair and crappy it is sometimes to be a human on this earth. But what you're learning in the next 20 years is, when do you say those things and how do you say them? Um, that's a really important part of you learning about expression for the next 20 years. One of the things that you're going to realize in the next 20 years is that your words have power. And that's why you need to be really thoughtful and considerate with how you say things and what you talk to others about, because it can bring really impactful changes in their life. We can still talk about the dark parts of life with others. You can still be honest about all of the crappy things you're seeing about life on Earth. But once you realize that your words have impact, um, if you're harsh, it's going to really bring people down. But if you relay it in a more powerful and more meaningful way, it can really lift people up and bring meaningful changes in their lives. One example is, you see somebody in your life that's not taking good care of their health. And you sit down with them and you bring up the harsh truth of life. You bring up that life sucks, that life is hard, that we're always working and we hardly have time to take care of ourselves, so it's difficult. And then you bring up the side of life where, we have only a couple of years, okay, more than a couple, but we have limited time on this earth. And you really touch that person by asking them, is this how you want to spend your life? Don't you want to be here for a long time? Don't you want to be here to see me go through these future achievements, for example? And that, if you relay the dark parts of life to this person, but you relay them in a beautiful way, focused on purpose with the very little time we have on earth, then you're able to inspire change in that person. So I hope, Sagittarius rising, that resonates. Next up, we have Scorpio rising. This section, the Scorpio rising section, is also appropriate for those that have their natal Pluto in the 4th house. So, Scorpio rising, you're going to have Pluto on January 21st. Pluto is going to enter your fourth house. There are some subconscious fears, some anxieties that you might have around belonging and your family. You might have experienced this in your childhood, and you might also experience it in the next 20 years, where you really see the power struggles and you really see the dark parts and the dark sides of families and belonging. You can really see maybe people in your life that are giving their power away just so they could belong to the family. That are people that are giving their power away um, so that they belong to the family, right? And you might experience some dark things around your family during this time, maybe some lies or some truths that usually are never spoken about. They might really come front and center during this time. And of course, you can respond in whichever way you want. That's the beauty of being humans with free will. But one of the ways that you could respond to this is that you shy away from your family and from a sense of belonging and connecting with them. Um, that you see those not so nice parts, and that you decide, well, I really don't want anything to do with that, so I'm just going to go hang out here on my own. That's very much Aquarius in the fourth house. But what Pluto wants you to learn, the lessons that Pluto wants you to learn, is to open up to people and to open up to true connection. To really realize that we all have these parts of ourselves that can do not so nice things. We all have these parts of ourselves that can lie, that can perhaps act not in the best morals as well. And to still be accepting that we can't connect and love each other while we still have that ability um, to act not so nicely every once in a while. And how you find your power and your meaning with this Plutonian transit in the next 20 years, you find your power by opening up psychologically, by also telling others these dark parts in yourself. Maybe revealing to your family and the people that you're connecting with some of your dark secrets that you've never shared with others. And by doing this, by accepting the dark in others and sharing your own dark, you can really help heal that connection and heal others as well as yourself, and really find meaning and purpose in family. One of the ways could be, of course, like having a child. Not every Sagittarius rising is going to have a child in the next 20 years. This is just one example. But really, when you have a child, it's such a beautiful, I imagine, I don't have any children. It's such a beautiful, meaningful experience where you see this human being and you love them. But at the same time, you see the not so nice parts. They cry, they can get annoying, you have no sleep, maybe your relationship with your partner is not the same anymore, but still you find that sort of meaning and power in the beautifully messy family connection that you have going on. So I hope that resonates, Scorpio rising. Now we'll head into Libra rising, or it will be at your natal Pluto in your fifth house. So for Libra risings, Pluto will be entering your fifth house on June 21st. Sorry, I keep saying June. On January 21st. So Libra risings, Pluto entering your fifth house is going to be asking you to find your power through self expression. There might be some subconscious fears or anxieties that you have around playing, around being childish, um, around following your instinct and just doing silly things. And some of the things that you could experience in the next 20 years with Pluto in your fifth house is that you are sort of playing with where's the boundary of play and having fun, and where am I going overboard? So you might be getting more comfortable with playing, with having fun. Maybe you meet people in your life, people come into your life that really encourage this side of you, that really make you feel like a child and make you want to play and have fun. And perhaps as you're doing that, you go over the line and you end up losing control. You know, maybe you end up buying way too much stuff and um, you spend way too much money, or it might go into addiction, that we're always playing and always having fun to the point where we're letting go of our responsibilities. We're no longer showing up to the best of our ability at work. It could be addictions like the TV, or other things that make us feel good, other things that we do for fun. Another way that this sort of 20-year period could work out for you, Libra rising, is that you're being asked to be more playful and to express yourself and to have more fun, but you're just scared. And what you're scared of is letting go, losing control. And it can be scary to lose control for sure. But what can happen because you're afraid to lose control is that you go all the way on the other side. You become very strict, very prude. Maybe you can't joke anymore with others. Everything they say, you take really seriously. And you're sort of playing along that line of too much pleasure and fun and none, and the trying to figure out the meaning and the purpose that playing can bring to your life. Because sometimes when we find an activity that we truly lose ourselves in, it could be painting, it could be woodworking, it could be meditation. When we find that activity, dancing is a perfect one, I think, as well. When we find that activity and we really lose ourselves in it, it can bring a lot of sort of ecstasy, a lot of bliss when we're in the moment, and make us feel more alive. And the planet Pluto, we talked about it earlier, is all about feeling alive, um, feeling like we have meaning in the very limited time we have on this earth. Next up is Virgo rising. All right. So, Virgo risings, on January 21st, Pluto is going to be entering your sixth house. And this section that we're going to talk about now, all of the themes that we're going to talk about, are also applicable for those people that have their natal Pluto in the sixth house as well. So you can pull up your birth chart online and take a look at where your natal Pluto is. If it's in the sixth house, then this also applies to you. So, Virgo risings. The next 20-year period with Pluto in your sixth house is going to ask of you to find your power and address your fears when it comes to service and when it comes to surrendering to others as well. So let's get a little bit more into what I mean by that. Um, One of the ways that we sort of surrender to others is in our jobs. We very much so say, for these hours, I will do what you tell me to do. That's one example. We also surrender to mentors, right? When we have mentors in our lives that we really look up to, that we go to them for advice, and we go to them to learn something that we feel like they know and we don't know yet. And what will happen or might happen in the next 20 years is that you come across these role models, and you can come across of these role models on both sides of the spectrum, both sides of the Pluto spectrum. You might come across role models who are very much not meaningful role models that are maybe lying, doing things that are immoral, um, or for example, people in your work, like your employer, that is again exercising their power over you, making you feel powerless. And on the other side, you could also come across really healthy role models and mentors that really change your life. Role models and mentors that get you in touch with the beauty of having people that have experienced life ahead of us sharing their wisdom with us, and how much purpose that can give to our life, and direction, how much direction it can give to our life. The sixth house also represents responsibility. So you might be playing with, how much responsibility am I giving away, or how much responsibility am I taking on, I should say. Um, when we are responsible, we are in a sense giving our power to that thing. We're responsible for keeping our baby alive. We're responsible for showing up to work and doing our job. And in a sense, that's giving our power to it. And there can be beauty and a lot of meaning and responsibility. And there can also be the other dark side of it, where we're chained to our responsibility and it's not something that's giving us meaning nor purpose. So during this 20-year period, Virgo rising, I would really encourage you to seek out healthy mentors. They are out there, and really listen to what they have to say. Really be open to what they're saying. Ask them questions and learn from them. And as well, stay humble during this time. Don't be afraid to be a student, and to really show up for the next 20 years and gather the wisdom from those around you, um, because the wisdom that you gather might really be life changing. Next up is Leo rising. I'll grab some water again. I've been talking for 53 minutes, so impressive. So we're about halfway. We started with Aquarius rising, and now we're at Leo rising. So for Leo rising, on January 21st, Pluto is going to be entering your seventh house. And the themes that we're going to talk about now are also applicable for those of you that have your natal Pluto in your seventh house as well. So the next 20 years, Leo rising, you are going to be asked to address your subconscious fears when it comes to being vulnerable and intimate with others. In the next 20 years, the way Pluto is going to ask you to do that is by bringing people uh, across your way who are going to challenge you, people that are going to bring up those fears, whether on purpose or not. They're going to bring up those fears. They're going to bring up some of the fears that you have around trust. And it might be that you start making really meaningful connections with others, make you realize how vulnerable you are. You care about them. You care about what they think of you. And you know that if they lie, if they do something, if they break your trust, that you are going to be deeply impacted, deeply hurt. And knowing this and being triggered with these fears, there's multiple ways that you could choose to react. One of the ways you could choose to deal with this Leo rising is by withdrawing, not letting anybody in, right? You could go on one side of the spectrum, not trusting anybody, being alone, looking at everybody with a sort of skepticism, not letting anybody in enough to a point where they could hurt you. So you have sort of superficial relationships. Or you could go on the other end and figure out, okay, who is to trust, who is not? How can I tell if somebody is somebody I can trust? And how can I deal and accept that in a relationship, there is the inherent aspect that I might get hurt. That is very much a risk that we're willing to take when we enter relationships. And as you go through this 20-year period and you accept that vulnerability, you will also find a lot of power and a lot of meaning in that. It will strengthen your relationships to the point, Leo rising, to the point that you have this intimate relationship with somebody and you know that they could hurt you, and yet both of you still trust to be together, to be honest, to be vulnerable with each other, to reveal the not so nice parts and still accept and love each other just the way you are. And that sort of deep intimate connection with openness and trust, it can really give you that sort of aliveness that you might be looking for. Next up, we have Cancer rising. And for Cancer rising, Pluto will be entering your 8th house. Pluto will enter your 8th house on January 21st. And the themes that we're about to talk about are also applicable for any of those that have their natal Pluto in the 8th house. So Cancer risings. With the 8th house, Pluto in the 8th house, the next 20 years will be about losing your innocence. And if you're somebody that's sort of like in your 60s or 70s, you're probably thinking like, I'm pretty sure I lost my innocence a long time ago. But maybe not. Maybe there's still parts of you that you think that you're still a little bit naive about. Parts of you that perhaps you still haven't really become realistic about, and about how they are in reality. So some of the ways that Pluto will help you with learning this lesson, you might be faced with some of the more scary parts of life, all of the places that you're innocent about. Pluto might really show you reality, show you that actually some people cannot be trusted. That will show you that people do lie sometimes. That will show you that some people are really looking out for themselves only and don't care if they hurt others along the way. So these types of things might sort of come your way literally, or it doesn't have to be. They could also manifest in your mind. And what I mean by that is that you're not necessarily dealing with these things in real life, but you're thinking about them. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, with Pluto in your eighth house, Cancer rising, you start realizing, like, wait a second, this person, this colleague, maybe they're not nice. Maybe they're actually asking me all this information or pretending to care about me because they're trying to sort of like play me in some way so they could get the promotion at work. All of a sudden, you start to sort of break your innocence with your partner and you think, wait a second, they could be they could be lying right now. Like, how am I supposed to know that they are actually at home right now? Like, it's really just trust because I mean, unless you're tracking them, you don't know. Um, so Cancer rising with Pluto in your eighth house, you're really going to be losing that innocence in your mind as well, realizing all of the ways that you're naive and easily trusting others. And there's many ways that you can respond to this because we all it might make you very cautious. It might make you scared of making any moves because you don't know who to trust. Um, it's sort of like, you're dating five guys and you cannot decide. They're all asking you like, okay, are we exclusive? And you cannot decide because you're just not sure, like, which one can I trust? It could be that you don't change your job because you just don't know if you're ready for a change, but you don't know if when you're entering the new job, if like, are these people trustworthy? Are they maybe like lying? Um, you know, are they maybe like super toxic and I just don't know? So that sort of naivety of things are perfect and things are amazing is going to be gone for you, Cancer rising. And one of the things that Pluto wants you to learn in the next 20 years is to step through that fear, to feel it, to acknowledge it, and to still go ahead and do the things that scare you. To still go ahead and trust people, knowing that they could very well not have your best intentions at heart. And a lot of positive things can come out of that, out of stepping ahead or stepping forward and doing these scary things, right? You enter situations where you feel alive. You enter situations um, where you need to sort of show up and know that things could go south, but you still show up because you want to. You show up because it's the choice that you want to make. You show up because it's the person that you choose, and um, there's a certain aliveness to that, and a certain power and meaning that it's a choice that you make out of yourself. Ninth house or Gemini rising. I will post this live replay on YouTube afterwards, so you can go back and watch all of the rising signs in case we missed yours, or in case you don't have time to wait until we get to yours, so you can come back and catch it later. And if all of this is resonating with you, if you're thinking like, okay, I want to know more about my Pluto story, then do feel free to book a reading. I just posted the link in the chat. In that reading, we can get into your Pluto story. and take a look at what planets are being aspected, what the next 20 years could mean for you as well. So it's going to be much more personal and specific to you. But Gemini rising. So for Gemini risings, Pluto on Sunday is going to enter your ninth house. And the themes that we're going to talk about now are also applicable to those that have their natal Pluto in the ninth house as well. So Pluto for the next 20 years might throw your way all the ugly parts of belief systems. And that could be any belief systems, religions. People could make money their belief system. Science could be somebody's belief system. And anything that people sort of attribute life's meaning to, that sort of helps them explain why we're here and what we're doing with our life, you'll start to see the ugly parts of it. You'll start to see um, the thing that I think about right away is for example, popes abusing their power over helpless children. That's very much like a Pluto in the ninth house. But it could be with anything. If you could start to see that people that are putting science on a pedestal become very dismissive and very cold and lose their emotional touch or their humanity touch and start making decisions that are um, no longer useful for the rest of humanity, or no longer meaningful, or no longer moral for the rest of society, because we're talking about Pluto after all, so morals are a huge part of it. And some of the ways that you might respond to this is you might become super doubtful of all the belief systems, super cynical. Like anytime somebody tells you something about the way the world is, you're sort of like, well, are you sure that's true? Or, well, I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure somebody else thinks something different or believes something different. But another way that you could respond to Pluto in your ninth house, Gemini rising, is that you choose a belief system and you stick to it no matter what, right? So, one thing that we've addressed with all of these rising signs is that it's on a spectrum. You could swing one way or the other. And hopefully, with the Pluto lesson, we're finding our middle, our happy middle. So one of the ways that you could respond is that you choose a belief system and you stick to it no matter what. You're not able to see the ugly parts of it as well. You think that your belief system is somehow better or different from the others. So that's also another reaction that you might have during the next 20 years as you're sort of learning to find your own balance. One of the other ways that you could react is you can become really wishy-washy. You might realize that no belief system is perfect, and then in a sense you might not take any position. You might start saying, well, like, everybody just needs to decide for themselves, and I don't believe in anyone particularly, and I see both positives in this one and this one. So that's also a response that you could have. However, what Pluto wants, what Pluto wants you to learn is to develop your own philosophy, to really find your own belief system. And because Aquarius is in your ninth house, for Gemini risings at least, I could really see it being that you establish your own belief systems. That Aquarius is innovation and being different from the crowd. So it could be that you establish some sort of unique belief system with maybe taking a couple of things from this one and that one, And what Pluto wants you is to establish this and to share it with others, not to be silent about it. Um, what you might find is that people really resonate with your belief system, with your life philosophy, and they flock to it. They want to be part of it. They want you to take that leadership position and to inspire them and motivate them and give them meaning. Um, so your belief system, your philosophy is going to be really relatable. People might start looking up to you. They might really start looking up to your morals and values, and putting them on a pedestal. So it could be a really interesting time for you to also learn the power that your actions have on others, that you're sort of being watched and being held to a high regard as well. Next up, we have Taurus rising. And Taurus rising, you're going to have Pluto in just a couple of days entering your 10th house. And these themes that we're going to talk about are also applicable for those of you that have Pluto in your 10th house as well. So Taurus rising, or those of you that have a natal Pluto in your 10th house. So Taurus rising, what Pluto is going to bring for you in the next 20 years is it's going to face you with some of the ugly parts about um, your worldly position. It's going to face you with some of the subconscious fears and anxieties you have around your public image, the way that people perceive you. So, what are some of the ways that this could manifest as? Um, Perhaps there is a part in your subconscious that is afraid of or dreading work because you grew up seeing your parents stuck in jobs that they dreaded, and they were not happy, and it really affected them in their life. And as a result, during Pluto transiting your 10th house, Taurus rising, these fears come up for you. It could be just a thing that comes up in your mind without an external trigger. But there could also be an external trigger. Perhaps you face something in your work um, that makes you realize you're heading down the same path that your parents headed down. And Pluto is asking you to do something about it. Um, Another example for Taurus risings, Pluto in the 10th house, could be that you are facing problems at your work due to your gender, for example, due to who you are, and due to your identity. And your workplace is not so okay with it. It's giving you some trouble, maybe some prejudice around your identity as well. And Pluto is asking you to really step in your power, um, to really, yeah, stand in your power and address these fears that you might have. Another way that this could manifest for Taurus risings is that perhaps you have really big ambitions in who you're going to be and what you're going to achieve in this life, and maybe you think, I want to become president, or I want to become CEO of this company, but they're put down by those around you. Perhaps you hear from others continually, oh, don't be silly, like, oh, are you sure you have enough education about that, or oh, are you sure you're capable, like, you're a woman and it's very hard for women in the workplace. um, so that you really need to face the uncomfortable parts about how we show up in the public and the role that we play in the public. And there are a couple of ways that you could respond to all of these things that Pluto is throwing your way. One of the things that you might respond, or one of the ways you might respond, is you might become overly sensitive. You might sort of cower down and agree with people. Yes, you're right. Maybe I'm not qualified to be CEO, or yes, you're right. It is difficult for women in the workplace, so maybe I'll just settle for director level instead. Um, what Pluto wants you to learn instead is that you can do it. You can achieve a really powerful space in the world and a really powerful position in the world. You have Pluto in the 10th house. You are going to be a powerful leader for the rest of the community around you, and you're going to hold a powerful position for them. And people, some people might be uncomfortable with that. Pluto, again, is the uncomfortable parts of life. But either way, if you accept that very prominent position that you're going to have in society, and you can accept that um, people might sort of judge you along the way, or uh, people might be against your success and trying to sabotage you, but you accept that, and you still go through with it. And no matter the fact that you're scared, you will find this zest, this fire for life, and this meaning and purpose for life as well. Two more to go. We have 11th and 12th house left. We got this. If you've been here since the beginning, thanks for sticking around. All right. So let's get into the 11th house. The themes that we're going to talk about are for anybody that has their natal Pluto in the 11th house, or for anybody that is Aries rising. Because Pluto, if you're an Aries rising, Pluto in a couple of days is going to enter your 11th house. So, what does Pluto want from you, Aries rising? So, for the next 20 years, Pluto might bring up some of the ugly parts of groups, the groups that you belong to, and specifically groups that are working towards a common goal. Um, what are some examples of that? Religious groups, your common goal is the church, the praise of the deity. It could be a volunteer group. Your common goal is taking care of these stray dogs. The group could be, a parents association at this your child's school. Your common goal is that your children get the best education and opportunities. So, whatever group it is that you belong to, in the next 20 years, there might be some power struggles there. You might see lying or stealing or cheating or questionable morals. And there are a couple of ways that you could deal with that. So, on one spectrum, you could isolate yourself, you could remove yourself completely from the group, and you could say, all right, well, I guess if I want anything good done, I need to do it on my own. Because every time I enter a group, things just go to crap. um, or one of the ways that you could deal with Pluto in the 11th house, Aries rising, is that you could speak up. You could tell the group that you don't think things are being handled the right way, and that what they're doing is actually not well done, and it's morally wrong, and they should correct it. And what could happen if you step in that position, one of the things that could very well happen is that you get thrown out of the group. One of the things that could happen is that you're ostracized from the group. We're talking about Aquarius after all. um, so during this 20-year period, Pluto is asking you to find what you really believe in. First of all, you really need that. If you're going to join a group, with a common goal, firstly, you need to find what you believe in, even. What group do you want to join? What common goal do you want to work towards? And then once you find that, Pluto wants you to devote yourself to it, and devote yourself to it in the company of others, not on your own. It's really about realizing the next 20 years, Aries rising. It's really about realizing that there is more power in numbers than alone. There's this saying that if you want to go fast, go far, or if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And this is what Pluto in the next 20 years is going to really teach you in the 11th house. Having Pluto in the 11th house, you are asked to lead that group, to give it a vision and direction, to speak up on the hard truths. When that group is steering off course, when that group starts going down the road of maybe cutting some cords here and there to make life easier, that you speak up, that you take that powerful position, that you say, this is not right. This is not what we're going to do. And Aries rising, by taking that powerful position with the groups that you belong to, it will really also give your life vision and direction. You will feel alive, you will feel motivated, and you will feel like you finally have a meaning and a purpose in life as well. All right, we reached the final sign, Pisces rising. If you missed all of the previous ones and you want to look back, I'll save this live to my channel so you can go back and watch it. Make sure you subscribe so that you can find it again. And as I shared previously, if these horoscopes are resonating with you and you want to get more deep into your specific Pluto story, then you can always book a reading with me. Those can, of course, be much more personal and specific for you. Pisces rising. If you're Pisces rising, Pluto is going to enter your 12th house in a couple of days. And the themes that we're going to talk about now are also applicable to those of you that have your natal Pluto in the 12th house as well. Pluto transiting your 12th house is going to get you acquainted with suffering and loss. And don't freak out. That doesn't have to be in real life. It doesn't mean if you're going to start losing everything. It could also manifest as a very prominent thought in your mind, that you really become mentally aware of the fact that everything could completely disappear. And feeling this heaviness of Pluto in your 12th house, Pluto is going to ask you to rise above it. Not to ignore it, not to pretend it's not there, pretend you're happy-go-lucky person, but to accept it, to feel it, and to learn to channel it into compassion. To learn to approach everybody that you come across with this beautiful openness, not being difficult with others because they don't meet certain high standards or certain expectations you have of them, but instead looking at them with this compassion of their humanity and the fact that humans make mistakes and humans try their best, but they don't always succeed. So some of the ways that this could also manifest is that you have a lot of people in your life that are really triggering you and the standards that you have, people showing up late to meetings all the time at work. That's personally one that I have. I hate it when people show up late to meetings, and I really have to tap into this 12th house feeling of we're all humans at the end of the day, struggling with our own issues, trying to do our best on this crazy planet, doing this crazy thing called life, and looking at somebody and having compassion for them. So some of the ways that this transit through your 12th house, Pisces rising, some of the ways it could also manifest is that you could be really sensitive to suffering. For example, when you pass by that homeless person on the street, that really affects you. You cannot look away. You really feel their pain and their suffering. Um, and it could be more intense than it usually is. It could be really standing out to you, all of this suffering. It maybe it will become really difficult for you to watch the news because anytime they share these difficult stories, it impacts you greatly. So that could be something happening in the next 20 years as well. Like I said, don't shut it off. Try your best not to respond in a way that you just ignore it. What? Pain? Suffering? There's none of that here on Earth. Pluto doesn't want you to do that. Pluto wants you to let yourself feel this pain, accept it, and channel that into compassion for everybody. Channel that into acceptance, into being open and listening to others and accepting their humanity as well. We did it. We did it. Amazing. I hope you're all excited actually for the upcoming Pluto transit. I know I am. When I was preparing this live, I started getting really excited and also really loving Pluto as a planet. Um, as somebody that has a lot of Sagittarius placements, I do think that I often think about meaning and purpose of life. And reading up about Pluto and preparing for this live, I found my love for it. I found my love for Pluto as the planet that um, it's just real with you. It doesn't hide, it doesn't play games, it doesn't pretend to be something it's not. It's real. It shows you reality, and it really helps you with finding meaning and finding purpose and um, excitement and this feeling of you don't want to go to bed because you're having fun. You don't want to go to bed because you're doing something meaningful, not necessarily fun. I don't want you to mistake that just because Pluto gives you a purpose and a meaning in life that it's going to be fun. We could still be working towards something really meaningful, um, but it might be quite difficult. Think of Doctors Without Borders that go to areas that don't have access to medical care. That's not an easy job, but they might see a lot of the dark parts of life, but yet they're doing something meaningful. And hopefully the people that are part of Doctors Without Borders are waking up with a sort of purpose and excitement about life, and are waking up with this feeling that they're doing something meaningful and fulfilling their Plutonian story. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for watching this. If you're watching the replay, then let me know in the comments if you're excited about Pluto, and if you have any questions about any of the rising signs, any of the natal Pluto placements as well. Just drop them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. And I do have Pluto in Aquarius meditation up on my channel as well. So if you're somebody that does meditation, you want to reflect for the next 20 years on what's happening for you, you can find that on my channel and do the meditation. Amazing. I've had so much fun. Thanks again.